Happy Tuesday to you. This is John McEntyre Show live. I'm John McEntyre. Today is, what is today? Today is May 27th, 2025. Um, I don't think I have to say it. This month has flown by. This month has actually flown by on me. Um, I was like, okay, every day, I mean, Tuesday feels like Wednesday. Friday feels like Sunday or Tuesday or Monday, whatever day it is. I mean, it's just been one of those months. And one of the funniest things that happened was someone I know that has a lot to do with me doing these lives. He was like, happy 1 year anniversary to you. I said, 1 year anniversary. He said, yes, you've been doing the lives for a year. I was like, seriously? And so everything's on YouTube and all of this. So I go back to YouTube and I'm like, wow, it has been a year. And I'm saying to myself, it does not feel like a year. It feels like just a couple of months. But then I looked at him. I was like, okay, yes, that's me talking about the summer. That's me talking about last year. I was talking about May budgets and every June budgets and everything like that. And I'm like, whoa, this time is flying by. So I'm actually doing good to be in the right year. Now that you said that, I was like, okay, so I'm good to be saying 2025. So, but today is May 27, 2025. We're coming off of an extended weekend, Memorial weekend. Hope everyone had a safe and blessed weekend. That we remembered the reason why we celebrate Memorial Day, um, because of the fallen soldiers that gave their lives for our freedom, and all of the other stuff that was just the celebratory things. I mean, I enjoyed the food. I enjoyed the burgers, um, the sweets, the desserts, and all of this good stuff. But I did remember myself having family members that um, have gone, and friends of friends, with family members that had passed on and have been veterans, died protecting our freedom, our country. And so hopefully everyone remembered the real reason we celebrate Memorial Day. And Memorial Day, to me, it kicks off the summer. That's really, I know summer, meteorologically, that's what, June 21st, something like that, summer solstice and all of that good stuff. I'm using those scientific terms, but believe me, I didn't do that well in it. So I learned that later on. Me, Memorial Day to Labor Day is summer. That's summer to me. Once Labor Day hits, I'm definitely, past summer, and usually it's just starting to really, really get hot. And it's like weird today. It's supposed this is the end of May, and it's like feeling like early spring outside. It's all rainy and cool and all of that. But I'm not complaining. I like it, and it's all good. So I have a good show today. That it was triggered from last week. Last week I was talking about retirement, the rule of 25. That if you were thinking of retiring, the rule of 25 kind of gives you a snapshot of how, if you're on track or not. And that triggers some things. A few people have asked questions. And so I wanted to, and it was mainly from the people that are thinking of retiring. They're older, they're going into their 60s, and in a few years they will be retiring. A couple of them, one guy, he was like, well, I really do need to think about this. I mean, because this last 10 years have flown by, and I really have 10 more years of work when I plan to retire. I might need to think about that. And so I was like, yes, that is something to think about. And so today I want to cover the top 4 things to do before you retire. And this is not the only 4 things. They're the top 4 things. There's more. There's a lot more to do, but these are the top 4. And before I get to that, I also want to thank, Andrea for making this possible. Even though Andrea, she's been on the show, and hopefully See, we're having those technical difficulties, went in and out. I don't know what happened. I just happened to notice that camera thing went out, but we're going to push forward. Uh, but as I was saying, this was made possible. Andrea, she's a guest on the show, and she is my wife. But I'm lucky enough to be married to my advisor, to the family financial advisor, and so she's actually, not only does she share her expertise on here, she's actually one of the supporters. Make this, to make all of this possible, make the time worthwhile to do this, and so. And she's able to look at all of the look at your entire financial situation, the things that I'm going to cover today. She can look at that. She can look at whether you are 16, 17 years old, 18 years old, and you're just getting started, up to someone who didn't realize that they were 65 and ready to retire, and now they need to talk to someone. So for all seasons of life, I've done a couple of shows and talked about the seasons of life. No matter if you're in the summer or the winter, she can help you with all of those. So you can give her contact information is on the screen while in there, but I just wanted to give her a shout out there. All right, let's get into these top 4 things. You've decided that you may be retiring soon, or you may already be in retirement and things aren't going exactly like you thought they should be going. Well, these 4 things should actually get you on the right path, get you on target, and then you can do those other things that would actually come after these 4. So the first one is, me. First thing, when we talk about money, first thing I want to know is what's important to you. That's your values. And throughout life, as I've talked about values, I've went in depth about values. It's what's important to you in life. And what I've always said is that one thing that happens with values, as you age, as you go to different stages of life, different seasons of life, the values may change. What was important to me at 20 is definitely not important to me now at this age. I mean, it's just not that important. Things have happened. I've gotten married. I have, family, other things, so my values changed. And most people's, if you live long enough, your values will change. Now, when you get into retirement, most people in their working years, their career is very important to them. They value their career. They value their work. They love what they do. And it is part of who they are. And even after they retire, it still is part of them. It's just sort of, for lack of a better term, it changes states. It's not like you stop doing those type of things because it probably is some of your aptitude, your talents and skills are at work. So you may just use them in a different way. Well, with your values inventory, you do a values inventory. Basically just sit down and say what's important to me. A lot of people, they probably have been living those types of values. They just like been in different ways. For instance, I had someone who, valued volunteering, and they've always valued volunteering. And I was like, okay, maybe you're not volunteering as much as you would like. You're still volunteering like you're still working. Maybe you should add more time into it. And that usually fixes it. Like, oh yeah, I mean, I forgot I do have like 12 hours freed up that I can actually do it. And one is particular. It was a gentleman. He retired, and all his life, I mean, he loves fishing. I mean, pretty much on the East Coast, he could tell you about where a certain type of a fish is. I mean, he just knows. I mean, he's fished from the tip of Maine, the northern tips of Maine, and standing out in the rivers, all the way to the Gulf side of Florida, going for the big game fish, the tarpons, those the big fish. He's just a serious fisherman. I mean, all up and down. He can name every beach. He can name every lake, every river, and he can tell you what fish he caught. I mean, he has just fish story after fish story. Well, he retired and work was still very important to him. And he was like, okay, I've fished enough. I just feel like, I can only do so much fishing. And so as we talked, some other values started to surface that he hadn't forgot about. It was just that he was just doing them. He just wasn't looking at it as being that way, which one of them was he also loved working with children. Because in his work, he had been around kids, and he saw a lot of gaps and holes in ways that the kids were being mentored and things like that. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe you should mentor kids, be more intentional about mentoring kids, like going to the schools and volunteering, or at your church, or at, one of the local nonprofits that work with children. And so as we talked more and more, and he really liked that idea, he was thinking of things. And then I just happened to throw it out there. I said, or, these kids that you're mentoring, take them fishing. And a light bulb went off. I mean, it was just serious. You could see his eyes just start like gleaming. And he's like, he even teared up some, because I was like, okay, I've hit this guy deep. And the reason why I hit him so deep is because he grew up in an inner city of New York. And so for him to go fishing, he had to go, he was like, I had to go out, Long Island, places like that. And they traveled New Jersey, to the rivers and things. And so he said a lot of his friends, they just never experienced fishing, even though he had been to the ocean, things like that. A lot of them haven't. And he was like, I would talk to them, and you could just tell that they felt like, some of them, once they got older and they started to, travel and things like that, they really, experience the serenity in fishing, just, being out there in nature, being around the water, it's just such a big benefit to it. And he was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going back to my inner city, and I'm going to take kids on fishing trips, camping, and fishing, and doing all of that. I mean, what else can you say? That's one of the highest levels of serving your fellow man, is when you are, taking those little ones and helping to mold them. And he knew, like, he wrote down 5 kids right off the top that he knew had never been fishing, and he went and got them. And the parents are excited. Some of the parents had never even been fishing. They went along. And so this guy who thought that, okay, I'm tired of fishing, he was thinking maybe I should go back to work, maybe part-time, something like that. He went to the next level, and he didn't realize just how strong and deep that value was. So two of his strongest values, his love of fishing and his love of mentoring kids, he meshed them together. And it seemed like, when I see him and I talk to him, it seemed like he's getting younger. You can just tell his passion is like crazy high. He's even said, he was like, why didn't I think of this, 30 years ago? Why didn't I think of this? He was like, it's just crazy. He said, I'm sort of irritated at myself that I never thought about this and everything. But that's what happened. He did a values inventory, and his retirement is even, I was like, he will probably live a few years longer because of this, because of his service. Because when you start to serve like that, there's no reason to leave Earth when you're serving in that capacity, because it's so, it's not that many out there, and so it's so needed. So here you go, another story, and then I'll move on to the next one. A retiree, she loved making gift baskets. She'd always done it. And when she retired, she had a lot more time. So one Christmas, she decided everyone on her list was going to get a custom basket. She was going to make each one specifically to this person. She loved this person so much. Everything in that basket was specifically for them. So she had like all of these different baskets. Um, lo and behold, so she had to find the I can't even think of the term right now, but the vendors, my God, the suppliers. Um, she found the suppliers because she was into high quality also. She was not, she was like, nothing against dollar stores and those types of stores, Walmart's, whatever. I wanted luxury because these were luxury type, people. Some of these people were like wealthy, and so she wanted to make, these nice baskets. Some of them had the wine, some of them had smoked salmon. I mean, caviar, things like that. So these weren't the baskets you could just go somewhere and just pick up for, $20 or $30. These baskets were like five, six, $700,000 baskets. These people started asking, where did you get the basket? She was like, I made it in my basement. It became a full-time business where 5 years in, she was shipping out over 250,000 baskets between, what was it, Labor Day and Valentine's, with Christmas being the bulk of it. Christmas was probably, she said it was about 80%. She had to pull family in, family. She ended up, she was like, I was never an entrepreneur. She said, I retired. I think she was a retired school teacher. Um, it was something in education, but and she pulled her husband in, and before you know it, UPS was coming to their warehouse many times a day to get these baskets out. So what started as just it was her hobby. It was a labor of love for her, because she was just creating something for each of her close friends. Then it became a multi-million-dollar business that she sold, like 6 years later for a few $1,000,000. um, and she said she started her first basket, it cost her like a little bit over $100 to make the first basket. And I'm like, okay, so you took $100 and turned it into a few $1,000,000 in 6 years. um, and it was because of her value. It was just a value. She loved giving good gifts. She didn't want to just go to the store and buy a gift and send it. She wanted to make something to show that she really cared for these people, that she put thought into this. Lo and behold, she didn't know that it was going to turn into all of that. Shipping out at the peak 250,000 baskets at the average cost of $300. Yeah, yeah. So there you go. All because of values. All because of value. So that was number one. That was my number one out of the four. Number two, do a retirement bucket list. You want to do a retirement. Everyone has a bucket list. I mean, most people have one. They just don't call it that. It's goals, things they want to do in life. But bucket list has been popular. It's been a popular term for, over almost a couple of decades now. Um, I remember reading, this was back in the 90s, Lou Holtz. At the time, he was the football coach at Notre Dame, one of my favorite college teams at the time. And he had written a book, and he had written, he got fired from his job in his 20s. He sat down and made a bucket list, and he put 107 things on there. And um, during the interview, it was like, it wasn't even in the 2000s yet. It was still in the 90s, I think. He had accomplished 102 of them. And so that's what made that bucket list thing so popular, to write it down. So in retirement, you want a bucket list, because most of the time in your working years, when you're working, most of the time your bucket list is, like a vacation for the family, things like that. It's usually family centered. And, if you do have some time, maybe that 2 or 3 weeks out of the year that you get to take a vacation, or, you may take up that hobby. You may fit some things in, but retirement is like the ultimate time, because if you've done it right, you have the excess money, and you have the excess time and the education, the know-how to do the things you want to do. Or at least you do have the money and time, which means you can access the education. You can do what you want to do. That's what financial freedom is, financial independence. And so a retirement bucket, most of the time it is travel. It could be volunteering. And if it is travel, where will you want to travel? Um, how will you travel? How often will you travel? Those are the types of things. Some people, I've talked to them. They've done the quick traveling. They're in America, so they've done the Canada to Mexico, maybe Europe if they had the time and money to do it during the summer or something like that. If they had the time, they would. Most of the time, it was like the entrepreneurs and things. But then there's some people once they hit retirement, they have their retirement party. They leave the party, go to the plane, to go to the coast, to jump on the ship because they're on their way around the world. They put it in a bucket. They say, well, I want to hang glide. Okay, yeah, hang gliding is cool, but I want to do it in Switzerland. Okay, well, that's a bucket list thing there. That's a serious bucket list there. Or I want to go, climb the Swiss Alps. Or, I want to go. I know a gentleman. He's been to Japan. He said he wanted to like experience Japan, so he spent a year there. And he said, yeah, it's been in my bucket list. He said, I was there in the military at one time. He said, and I said, I want to come back and spend more time. Is because, when I was there in the military, we was always, like all packing up to leave. We didn't know if how long we were going to be there. I wanted to actually experience it. And so he went and spent a year, and now his bucket list, I'm like, he's talking of maybe moving there permanently. And I'm not mad at him because I want his address because I know I have a place to stay when I get there. And I told him, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to put it on my bucket list to come and stay with you when you move to Japan. He was like, hey, let's do it. So, we're all for that. So do that retirement bucket list. Make sure you do that retirement bucket list. The retirement doesn't mean death. That day, it used to be a time where people, I want to retire and I'm going to sit on the rocking chair on the front porch, and they may live like a year or two because they just wasn't using their bodies. Now people are not thinking about rocking chairs. I'm seeing people. I'm at the gym, like I say, I talk about it a lot of time. The gym that I go to, there's a pretty large, retiree crowd there. I'm seeing motorcycles and that type of stuff. Convertible sports cars pulling up, things like that. I mean, they're playing serious now. Minds are open, and there's a lot more things to do, and so that bucket list is doing it. Number 3, make sure you've done all of your a full financial inventory. If you work with an advisor, then a financial advisor, you should have that. If you work with all advisors, you should have a full financial inventory, like your insurances, your investment accounts, making sure you know where all your investment accounts are, making sure you have all the insurances in place, for instance, or maybe you didn't know you had certain investment accounts or insurance policies, or maybe you forgot about them. In the area of real estate, sometimes people forget that they've inherited a couple of acres of land somewhere and they're no longer using it, and it's actually valuable. But so doing an inventory, going through all of the paperwork, your personal property. A lot of times you have a lot of personal property that could be valuable. And at one time it was extremely important and valuable to you. Now that you're older and you're going to do different things, you don't need it any longer. So you need to decide, am I going to, give it away? Am I going to sell it? What am I going to do? Am I going to, donate it or whatever? There's quite a few people I know, they were given expensive art pieces, and they didn't exactly want to give them away, so they allow museums to display, for them to be on display at museums. They're very valuable. They still have them, but they're the museum is taking care of it for them and all of this, so they don't have to worry about it. And so your personal properties, your real property, you need to know your assets and your liabilities. Knowing where all of this is, your financial inventory, making sure not just you, that your advisors and the people who will be receiving it, the kids or the heirs or whoever, everyone needs to know it's time to do the inventory, so you can let everyone know around you what's going on. That, because that's very important to people. You need to know your income and your outgo. where all of your income is coming from, and where all your outgo is going. That's very important, because most of the time the average retiree, they go into what is called fixed income. I'm on a fixed income. So that you need to know exactly where you are, where you're standing, how much income, is coming from investments, what's coming from Social Security, things like that. Um, I've seen people that had totally forgotten that they had that annuity. And it was time, they could have been, they can take payments from it now. They've had it long enough to where, hey, it's time to take payments. It's ready to annuitize, which I guess that's the right term. Did I say that right? Yeah. Getting pretty good with the big words. So yeah, but doing an inventory, puts all of that into perspective, helps you out. Um, and I touched on it, but it lets you know your needs, your don't needs, your wants, and your don't wants, in that area, because sometimes you can have extra automobiles and you're like, I don't need this many cars now. I don't need that work truck, or I don't need that, maybe, and sell it or whatever, or trade it in. Okay, well, I have this truck now. It's time to trade it in for that convertible Porsche Boxster or whatever, or that Harley Davidson, big fat boy or whatever. But it's all on you. Do an inventory so you'll know where you are. And the last one, a lot of people, they don't think about, is get big projects out of the way. Get those big major projects. And most of the time in this, when we talk about the large projects, it usually pertains to the house, like renovations. Before you retire, for instance, most of the time with retirees, well, with everyone really, in all seriousness, it's the bathroom and the kitchen. You're getting older. It may be time, lower the cabinets or make things more accessible, easier to get to. It may, who knows, something may come down the line. You may need to add a ramp to the house, things like that for easy access. And sometimes people, if they don't think about it and they get into retirement and then they decide, okay, I've got this time, I think I want to do the bathroom. I'm going to redo the bathroom. I'm not trying to get into a tub anymore, so I want to have one of those nice showers installed where I can sit down, do my showers and things, which is me. I'm talking to me. This is one of my bucket list things. Will probably happen even way before I retire. I've been in some nice places and I've seen some showers that I would put my bed in there. I mean, I've seen some large showers and I'm like, these things are nice. And it was, some of these people, they're retirees, did very well. And they, it's almost like a spa. It's almost like going into a spa. Well, they did that. It was like, well, I did this 5 years before I retired because I knew I wouldn't have had the energy, and I went over budget. And that's usually the big thing. You start large projects when you retire and you're on a fixed income and you've budgeted for this particular renovation to be a $20,000 project, and you're halfway through and you're 30,000 in. It's time to, it may be time to rethink everything, or it may be too late. Some people have said, well, I had to go back to work because I had to finish this because it became an eyesore. I ran out of money, and it wasn't complete, and it needed to be done, so I had to go back to work. Okay, had I planned 5 years in advance for this, then things probably would have been much easier on me. So take care of those large projects, whatever it is. It may be around the house, something that's very important that's going to be important during retiring, and you're not going to want to invest that time and energy and that money, that retirement money, into it. Take care of it, now, while you have, the work income coming in and everything. So those are my top 4 to think about. Do the values inventory, do a retirement bucket list, do the financial inventory, take care of those large projects. And there's a lot more, but those, usually doing those triggers the others. It usually triggers those others that you have to take care. Those are usually steps you have to take care when you're taking it. I call these the big four before retirement. So I hope I gave some good information there. You may be in that stage. Okay, well, I'm thinking I will be retiring soon. I need to talk to someone. Contact us, sit down. If you have questions, we're available. Give us a call, contact us, go to johnmcentire.com. You have the phone number, toll-free phone number or local. Contact us. We'll make sure and get your retirement on target or any other area of finances. So that being said, I hope you have a good week. I will see you next time, same same channel. Have a good day.